Thank you. Hopefully everybody's having a good time at the event. Obviously, I got to see Pam speak earlier this morning, and that's always a riveting moment, and I'm going to be stealing some of her lines and injecting it into this topic as well. As everybody said, or as the gentleman said, I am Ryan Rowcliffe. I'm the field CTO at HYPR. We concentrate solely on passwordless, and that is really bringing that to enterprises and markets. I did notice the previous with Joe that there was a lot of different variables along the way. We are very much purist. One of our core principles is that there shouldn't be any shared secrets in the authentication flow. So when you start factoring that into the equation, things get a little bit different in what you're allowed to kind of achieve in your deployment methodologies. I did not know that I was going to be following somebody who was talking passwordless, so this question is now looking pretty lame. I do live by this, thinking that passwords are a terrible solution for our modern computing. They were great in the 60s, they were great in the 70s, but we're well beyond the scope in which passwords could be used to solve problems. And once again, at HYPR, we are firm believers that there should be zero shared secrets in that authentication flow. And that is a pretty critical component. And to go and support all of our positions, I don't know, I mean, we're all identity people. For the last 10 years, if you looked at DBIR, this number has pretty much stayed stagnant for 10 years. 80% of attacks have been credential misuse or compromise. So we obviously haven't solved any problems in 10 years. Unless anybody wants to disagree with that. I don't think we've solved it, right? Bless you. And we can obviously probably break our behavior of blaming users, because that's what we've done as a security and identity organization for quite some time. It's the user's fault for not managing their 16 to 18 character passwords, rotating them every 90 days. That's not fair for us to put on the users. Right? And then obviously once a breach happens, we're all stuck for months trying to get the attacker out or the compromise out and doing cleanup. We haven't solved 10 years, 15 years of the same thing over and over and over again. Anybody disagree with it? No? Nothing ahead? Okay, so we all agree we have a really serious problem. The one thing that's interesting is that out of all this, we recently, in the last 2 years, have started getting more recommendations even out of our government, at least in the US, right? OMB last year in 2022 put out that they are now advocating for phishing resistance. So that's a great recommendation from the government. How long before, say, the public sector starts picking this up and the private sector picks this up? And then we also are getting recommendations out of CISA. And the one thing that they're both starting to do is say FIDO. Now, Joe was saying FIDO is not everything, and I'm immediately going to give the counterpoint, which is FIDO is everything. And I would, Pam brought it up earlier, is about participating in the standards. It is actually on us who work in this industry, who spend our time and identity, to contribute to these standards, right? It is the chance that we get to shape and form these things in the contributions. We sit on the FIDO board, that's where Pam and I got to meet. And that is where we can influence and do things for the better across the whole industry. There's a lot of vendors out there that have built what they're calling passwordless solutions, but they're not leveraging a standard. And the last time I saw that be successful was a never. Right? Proprietary solutions will not get adopted across the industry or solve the whole industry-wide problem that we have. So it is on all of us. And I would recommend if you don't participate or you're not looking at getting into FIDO, if you do care about passwordless, that is going to be the path forward, right? And then under CISA, there's also the antiquated but still very successful CAC and PIV technology. It's a standard. I would still support that very much. There's ways for us to transition old to new and enforce a modernization, which is leverage smart cards and certificates where you cannot leverage a FIDO standard. And that will keep you in the path of zero shared secrets. So you're kind of getting a hint at where my belief system sits and most likely where HYPR's belief system sits. So out of this, we've talked this whole topic about, hey, there's the magic of life-changing experiences of going passwordless. One of the bigger problems that we all see is how do you get the businesses to actually adopt and be willing to take on this project? We've done this for a couple of years, and we've gotten quite a few enterprises that actually go passwordless, hundreds of thousands of employees that do not even know their password. And the biggest challenges initially was getting the business to accept this is an investment worth making now. Well, we did contract out and sorry, I'm out of sync. So the magic's actually in the standards. The standards being passkeys. How many people know the flavors of passkeys? I got 4 hands. So in the world of FIDO, we did just big marketing shift, by the way. And the marketing shift and the information shift is that all things out of FIDO are passkeys. So there used to be a spec for FIDO 2, there's a spec for U2F, and there's a spec for UAF. We got 3 right there. What everybody knows passkeys to be is technically a WebAuth and FIDO 2 spec, okay? We can appreciate that Apple's marketing engine has exposed everybody to the world of passkeys. I was just talking with Joe before. I was like, look, I'm an advocate. I don't necessarily approve the way Apple rolled their stuff out because, yes, I can share my passkey of my Netflix account to anybody who's in my contact list. I, as a security guy, do not really enjoy that as a way to solve a problem. But if consumers start using passkeys in some of these services, how much easier is it for them to adopt passkeys when they come to work? When we initially tried to solve problems with SMS, right? MFA, hey, we need MFA. And the first thing we got out of the banks was, here's an OTP over SMS. Consumers eventually started adopting that. Why? Because the consumer services started pushing it out, and then it became something very acceptable within the enterprise for us to use as MFA. Now, we can all sit here as security people and say, yeah, no, SMS is complete crap. It's been compromised since 2014. SIM swap, blah, 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 blah. We can keep going down the list of how much of a failure that is. But the mass market adopted it, and they got used to it. Apple's approach to passkeys is that same pattern. So when we get passkeys in the enterprise, it won't be a shock culture, it won't be a difficult adoption. But the concern is that there are synced passkeys, and no enterprise is ever going to allow a synced passkey to ever authenticate their user into their resources. If they do, that's a very risky, trusting organization, and my hat's off to you. But there are other things like device-bound passkeys, and that is where I think what I was seeing Joe talk about was straight to a YubiKey, a physical key. My bias is HYPR actually has a device-bound passkey on their mobile phone. So that way the key doesn't leave, and you can still use your mobile phone as an authenticator and still have 0 shared secrets, and it still follows the specification. So my world is that FIDO can solve these problems, and that can work for your workstation, and that can work for web use cases. Once again, 0 shared secrets, device-bound passkey, and also we can support synced passkeys. All of us need to go spend time hanging out in the Alliance. But what I was getting to before is that we contracted out to Forrester to go ahead and do a study for our customers. And I'm only putting this up because this is the data we have, and this is at least based off of our customer base on why there's business justification on actually going to your business leaderships and saying, hey, if we take this project on and we actually drive past this, we're going to get a security benefit, and our business is going to get a serious return. And I would tell you right now that I saw these numbers and I was shocked as hell as the output from that review from Forrester. I did not expect these numbers.
How big is that company?
That was the combination of multiple businesses coming together. It was an average out of our enterprise customers.
10K. 10K size.
It was the 10K. Thank you. That's Mr. Matt back there. I will take him all day long with me any one of the conversations I go to. As a result, 10, 15 years ago, I was selling self-service password reset tools. And I was actually just talking to Matt back there earlier today. I'm like, why are we still looking at self-service password reset costs? Like, why is this a thing at all? And businesses haven't solved it. It goes back to, we haven't solved any of the problems. But when we start looking at these numbers and we start looking at our customers that have experiences with passwordless, that actually becomes a return on investment. That actually becomes not a hypothetical from a marketing team or a hypothetical from a sales team. This was the actual return for this business. They can immediately justify going and making a passwordless project. And I was even shocked too with the end user productivity, all that getting captured in that users were being way more productive. The security side of me is like, this is just way better, way secure. We usually like to sacrifice our users from time to time as security people, but users were having higher productivity, less annoyance in their day-to-day, less challenges for work. Another iteration just showing it in a pie chart form because we need graphs. You can't have slides without graphs or pictures. I did not go meme heavy. I was planning on going meme heavy, and I didn't know if the audience was going to be entertained by it or not. Could always be challenging there. I apologize. I have to pull up a notebook because I had some notes that I made specifically around Pam's talk, and I want to sell her out a couple times. Once again, if you are able to take pictures, if you're looking for a reason, and Pam even had brought that up, you can go to your leadership and you can make a case now. If you wanted to actually make a passwordless project, whether it be the way Joe was talking about earlier, this isn't a vendor-only type of number. This was a straight-up customer. We weren't allowed to talk to them. This was our customers reporting back to Forrester. So this, also, if you want a more detailed report, I can give that to you as well. So there are challenges, and I'm pretty sure that Joe was bringing up some of the challenges that you may encounter as you go on this lovely little journey of trying to make your organization passwordless, or you want to achieve some of these goals. For us, one of the first ones is, I have a legacy system environment. How do you make it passwordless? The biggest challenge with that is that, look, it is a journey, and you're not going to be able to flip a switch tomorrow and everybody's going to go passwordless. Also, don't make that the bane of your target of your project. If you can get 80% of your users, 80% of your environment covered with passwordless, how much does that take away from your threat landscape? It's way more valuable than not doing it. So usually this is the common question. I get this question over and over and over with customers that I talk with. Like, I just can't do it. I have systems I can't protect. It's, well, how many people are touching that? Well, maybe 10% of my users. Like, so you're telling me you're not wanting to kill off 90% of your threat landscape for that 10%. And then it's, oh, wow. You know what? Maybe I should go justify this. Anybody have that kind of environment? Got legacy systems? You can just nod your heads. We all have them. If you've been around long enough, everybody's got those things that are running. I wouldn't be surprised if I said AS400 and I see smiles pop up. I even got laughs. So it's all true. It's all real. It all sits out there, right? I cannot require my users to use mobile devices. Anybody have that situation? I live in California. We do have a state law that says that anybody who mandates their users to use a mobile phone must pay that mobile bill. Anybody else have that? So there's other options. And this actually expands a little bit further. One of our customers could be in manufacturing. You can't mandate a line worker to carry their phone onto a line and operate machines. Right? You don't want them having a phone in their pocket. Or how about call centers? Can you have people with call centers take their mobile phones in? No. It's just not going to happen. This is just not going to happen. Why we believe that mobiles are the future of probably the predominant most of use cases, you do have to have support for, say, a YubiKey. Or actually, now that smart cards are evolving, smart cards actually have a on-device passkey support, which could use NFC or anything else of that nature. Or, as I think I heard the gentleman before me talking about, maybe a Windows Hello for Business. Right? Challenge is when you get into Windows Hello for Business, what happens when you have a shared terminal in one of those call centers? How many registrations are going to happen there? You do?
5 users, I believe.
And 5 is cap. Yeah, you're going to get a cap on. Correct. So which kind of moves us back to the hey, can it be a mobile phone, or can we use a smart card or something like a USB security key to cover that use case? So there are ways out in which I'm not picking on other authenticators, but some authenticators were built many years ago, and they have certain little seeds in them Things that, like, hey, TOTP was great back in the day, but it is a shared secret. There's a seed. And we can all talk about, like, RSA getting their seeds spread out in the wild and what that costs businesses. So when we look at living by getting rid of those shared secrets, even our authenticators need not to have shared secrets in them. And that's a very, very hard principle to live by, but I think it's a very successful principle when we get there. All right, so this usually makes everybody's eyes pop up when we're having conversations, because the business is saying, hey, this passwordless thing is going to touch every user in my organization. That scared me. I can't handle that. I don't know what my users are going to do. Is it going to be productivity concerns? How do we achieve this thing? How is this even possible? Once again, it's a journey. Figure out what your organization can take. Sometimes it's the IT team. Sometimes it's the security team. Who are the ones that are willing to, be a little bit more ahead of the curve, try something new, follow a different process? That team will spiral, or not spiral, but will increasingly grow and grow and grow. You start taking little chunks out of the organization. There's also where we found quite a bit of success, where I've seen the pattern of success has been in larger, older organizations. They actually set up workshop days and cycle people in. You have some people, it's in essence like a help desk day of education and marketing. Come in and say, hey, look, you're going to be using this new life of passwordless, and this is going to be what your flow is going to be. And that has seemed to be a way to accelerate an immense amount of adoption of a new technology stack. Because technically, this problem isn't a technology problem anymore. This problem is a human problem. And the human problem is humans don't change well. It's very difficult. People have written books, like Who Moved My Cheese or Who Stole My Cheese, if anybody's seen that book. Yeah. Once again, if you've been in the industry long enough, I'm pretty sure you had a leader in your life that said, hey, you're gonna read this book. Yeah, Who Moved My Cheese or Who Stole My Cheese. Yeah. It's like, all that is about is like change.
Deal with change and don't get upset about it.
Yeah, accept it.
Yeah.
And the proof to the point why I wanted to bring that up is that we had some users that were kind of fighting the idea. And that's a quote from one of the users, which was like, I don't know why I waited so long to do this. This is easier than brushing my teeth. And that's just a perfect example of what a person has in their head of something new and something different. But then once they experience it, the perspective changes really quick. So they had built all sorts of things up in their own head. Then they got the experience and they're like, I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. So how do we solve that across the board? It's through marketing, through internal story, through internal education, and just informing and educating. That's really how you get a whole organization on board. There's a lot of other steps I saw earlier from the previous talk, which was, all right, we're going to use 502 here, we're going to use a different authenticator here. All I saw in that view was, that's confusing as hell. Could I give that to a knowledge worker and find success? I think that's a challenge. It's on us to solve that problem. Users need something simple, easy, to replace what they've been trained to do for years. If we can't deliver that, one, as industry, as vendors, thank you. I think I might not even go 10 minutes longer. That's on us. If we fail the industry, we failed our users. The one thing I advocate the most is we cannot put this on users to solve. It's on us as the industry, as the market, as the vendors, to solve those challenging problems. Users need it simple, they need it easy. If we don't do that, we're failing at what we should be aspiring towards. Now, all that chitter chat, here's an example of what a plan looks like. It's a high-level plan. I opted not to put a Gantt chart up there because who wants to look at a Gantt chart during a talk? I don't. And I don't want to explain a Gantt chart either. But it's a simple high-level flow of how do you start doing the announcement? How do you start educating? how do you get some testing in place as well, right? As much as I can sit here and say that the pie in the sky is that everything is perfect and great, you need to test, you need to validate. If not, then you're going to definitely hear about it. Then you start working on the promotions, start kind of kicking out a little bit further and further. And then you trigger the enrollment. And the enrollment you can do on workshops. We've had people enroll, I think, about 50,000 to 60,000 in a single day, where that's a mix of different types of knowledge workers, whether they be the line workers or they actually just be the technologists. And they were able to just start going day over day over day over day. We've had another organization that actually put the responsibility on organization owners or GMs. And their executives said, by these dates, your teams need to be onboarded. If not, you're going to have consequences. And that caused each one of those business units to take an initiative and start driving enrollments. And in the end, that benefited the business. And then you continue just your adoption cycles. That's it. It's not a super complicated one. Yes, we could get way more nitty-gritty. We can get way more into the details of what happens in each one of those stages. But from a high level, you can get a plan. And there's obviously room for you to kind of refine it deeper and deeper. Another one that we get quite a bit is regulations and data requirements. Like, hey, where's this data going? How's this, who has access to data? Where are the security concerns with this? One of the beautiful things that if you are hanging out in the world of the FIDO specification, you do have an idea that privacy is a really core part to everybody who's working on the spec. So from the ground up, privacy is taken as a priority, whereas some other things out there that are not FIDO aren't necessarily geared towards that direction. I'm trying to watch my language so I don't offend anybody. When it comes to GDPR, there's no concern because the data resides on the device. That's the beauty of FIDO. You're either going to have it sitting on a mobile phone, you're going to have it sitting on a YubiKey, you're going to have it sitting on a Fashion key, it could be sitting on a smart card. The credentials do not reside in the back end anymore. The credentials reside with the passkey, right? That's the first step of actually having a level of security that is not even comparable to what we have today. And then I went early. I saved everybody some time. If there's any questions, I didn't go super detailed. I didn't go through any architecture. I didn't want to go into a technical spiel because FIDO is FIDO. I wanted to actually concentrate more on just what might be some challenges. And technically the magic really is getting the business units to adopt and to want to fund the projects.
So what would be your suggestion, I've got a lot of people to convince if we're going to go do that. Where would you start as far as building that case with management executives? Documentation that's out there. You have some of it in here, but where else can we go to start building that case?
Usually in the situations that I'm involved in, the cases are built with understanding what does the business look like and then getting a plan put together. This is very high level. One is there actual financial benefit for us to do this project? Second is, what's the security outcomes going to be? And the third is, how long before I'm going to get the return on that? So the security team gets dragged into the mix, the infrastructure and endpoint computing leadership, so usually the CIO and CISOs, and then CEOs usually get dragged in later. But if you have to get lower level, depends on your organization. I don't want to make assumptions because the politics.
Those people will be easy. It's actually getting it across the business. And I work in a technology company, so we've got a lot of smart people who think they know. We just have to.
Some of the situations I've encountered has been that maybe PAM, not PAM, but maybe PAM itself. PAM, privileged access management is a low-hanging fruit item in which basically shows justification really quick. And that stays within the IT team, right? That stays within a secured kind of smaller group. And that immediately becomes the catalyst. And then that lets you jump to the next team because then people start going, hey, yeah, I don't use a password here. It's a longer journey when you take that route. And it was actually probably easier to do that route before there was a justifications where the business is going to get this return. Once again, if you got to sell each team individually if you have to drive your decision on that large of a consensus, which is always fun. One thing we've done is that we build those plans with our customers. That's been our experience, very consultative kind of, what is the political challenges you may have to overcome, and let's work that out. Like, let's figure out how we would strategically do that together, making you the educated one. That's been how it's worked for me.
So that enroll bucket, right, is a big bucket, and it can incorporate a hard cutover. It can incorporate something that I would call nudging, right? Or that certainly Microsoft uses the word nudge. And is that, like, in your opinion, what are the best practices that you've seen work in that way? Like, do you nudge them and nudge them and nudge them and then hard cut them, or what?
So from a best practice standpoint, it's let's go with it's a 3 nudge and then consequence, where if the business is willing to push that. That's where the business unit, where we empowered the business unit at an organization, they did the 3 nudge time limit, and then they went straight into consequence. Other situations were during that enrollment where month over month, a 12 character moved to a 16, moved to an 18, moved to a 24. Month over month over month to trigger a behavior. And it got bad. And it worked though. It was the carrot stick, it's the carrot stick. I don't know if I always subscribe to that, because that's kind of like, did we fail to promote that in the business correctly, where users had fought so hard that they had to be hit with the stick so hard to adopt it? So it depends on the organization. Every culture is a little bit different, and I think that the best practice is identify what works best in that culture.
Something you didn't talk about, but sorry.
I don't know. Aren't you the nemesis you're the evil doer from Pam's talk,
I
right?
am. I do make robot sharks out of nanobots, but that's only on the side. For my primary gig, among other things, I own the authenticator for Microsoft. The thing that you didn't talk about that might be interesting to think about as well is hey, since it's obvious you suck at passwords, you don't get to have one anymore. And that's a trigger like, for example, if you have a forgot password request, if you have a compromised password incident, any of those incidents can trigger a forced roll. So it's a good lever for organizations to use. Sort of say, hey, you suck at passwords, you don't get to have one anymore.
I agree 100%, and I did miss that in the conversation, which is, hey, at this date, anybody who does make a password reset request, they're forced enrolled, right? The side effect is you don't get to do a password reset, you're bad, you have to use a new authenticator, right? Some organizations do that because they also have seasonal employees, right? Like the employees that may not show up for another 3 months. And of course, the default behavior is they're doing a password reset when they arrive. So I agree 100%, that's another approach to it.
So exactly how does that work? So that
Case you just described. So you use a close in password reset. No, you can't get a password reset. Now, what do you ship them a authenticator? What happens at that point?
So for us, right? So the one thing I was told was don't sit here and sell our product. So I'm not going to sell our product, but I'm going to use it as a baseline. The baseline is that we have a mobile authenticator as well, which is based off of FIDO UAF, or they can use a platform authenticator, depending on the user. But the enrollment process would most likely be our mobile application. That make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, there's depending on what you're talking about. Factory workers that can have mobile devices. I mean, you brought them up yourself, right? So
in those, yeah. So default, it's a password reset use case. If it's a line worker, they're going into a building, so you can handle that much different. That could be an issue of the device right there and execute enrollment instead of a password reset. If it's a remote employee, then you need to do something over the web, right? There needs to be some sort of verification process, and then you need to use most likely a mobile authenticator at that point. But each one, because that goes back to, I'm gonna wait and see how long before she comes and tears me off this.
30 seconds.
Oh, yeah! Where was it? Yeah, see, I think I had another slide in here that actually had the breakdown. Yeah, I did. Apologies. That's where this kicks in, right? This is where you end up finding your way to saying what device is going to be used for what use cases. If they're going to be all my line workers, then it's going to be a YubiKey or it's going to be a smart card. There's no way around it because you just can't let them operate without that. If it's going to be remote employees or this group of users, it's going to be a mobile device. And depending on that password reset flow, you would dictate that.
All right, we're out
All
of
right, kicking
time.
me out.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.